What's going on, guys? Another segment here of the Fantasy Football Stock Report. This time we are touching on the position of running backs, which is a very big position when it comes to fantasy football. In a CBS league, which I play in, you usually want to have you play two starters, and then you usually want to have at least a couple on your bench, just to make sure that things pan out in case one of your guys goes down with injury. Um, so always a huge position. Always the talent pool always very, very deep at running back. But let's dive right in and tell you some of the guys that I like this year, that I really like to have big breakout seasons or bounce back seasons even, and then some guys to kind of stay away from, maybe won't live up to the expectations you expect them to be as well. The first guy on my list for running backs is a guy that when he was drafted in the NFL draft, again, this is a rookie, and as I mentioned in my quarterback video, rookies and I really haven't had a whole lot of success, but I think a couple of this year's rookie class are going to have big, big years, and this is certainly one guy you want to take a look at, and that's Trent Richardson of Cleveland. I think the guy has major, major upside. Look, he was insane at Alabama when they won a national championship. He was a cornerstone of that offense. Sports Illustrated has him as a tier 2 guy. I have him in that same kind of bracket, but with huge upside as a potential number 1. Because look, who else is going to carry the ball in Cleveland? The answer is nobody. You think of it this way: after Peyton Hillis left, the only guy they had running the ball mostly was Montario Hardesty. And what has he done in fantasy football? Not much of anything. Um, I think Richardson's going to be a stud in this class. I think he's going to become the new face of the running back franchise. They're all going to forget about Peyton Hillis and what he did there in his breakout year. Richardson's going to be the guy. And yeah, we know Cleveland's offense doesn't exactly scream of juggernaut, but it's also young. You got a rookie quarterback in Brandon Weeden, although the guy's 28, 29 years old. A young receiver in Greg Little, who I hope will only get better. He was mostly a flop last year. The thing to like, he's a hard-working, he runs between the tackles, he's got speed. What's not to like here in this situation? So if Richardson falls to you in your draft, don't be afraid to take a chance on him. And I know there's a lot been in the media lately about that knee procedure that he had that kind of bothered him at Alabama throughout the years. I don't think it's going to be a big issue going forward. I still think he's going to be ready by week 1. Keep your eye on that. But I certainly see Richardson as a guy you definitely can rely on in your starting lineups. Huge, he can play right out the box, and I think he's going to be right now starting out as a decent low number, or maybe low number 1, high number 2, huge upside. Another guy that I like, that I even drafted in round 3 of my fantasy draft, that I think is going to have a big bounce back year. And I know you guys are going to say it. You guys are going to say, oh, you want to avoid the guys coming off the ACL, MCL injuries. You don't want to touch them. Well, but when it's Adrian Peterson, I mean, to me, it's kind of a different story. SI has him as a tier 3 guy. I have him as more of a tier 2 with major upside. Because it's actually kind of unpredictable to guess what's going to happen for a player after coming off a knee injury. We've seen it with guys, Tom Brady, Wes Welker, a couple Patriot guys. I know I'm Patriot biased, but whatever. But they seem to do well, and others don't do so well. So it's kind of unpredictable. Peterson isn't an exception to that because, who knows what's going to happen there. But before the injury, you have to admit, he was one of the elite running backs at fantasy. He was always one of the guys that came off early in draft boards and often. And what's good about this, though, is that the Vikings have been very careful with him in his rehab work. They kind of just waited things out to see where he was at, and before he even got back on the field. They briefly put him on the PUP list just to be safe, to see where he was at, and then just recently they took him off of that. But Leslie Frazier's been saying all along, hey, I think he's going to be ready to go week 1. I think he's ready to go week 1, and that's great. And he's even said recently in the media he wants to be hit by his teammates. That's energy, that's determination. That just shows that Adrian Peterson is no quitter. That he is, he wants to be out in the field, he wants to be out there and help his team, and he will certainly, I think, help in big ways in fantasy this year. At least I hope so, that I took the chance on him, and hopefully he works out for you if you guys take the risk. But just in case, if you do decide to take a chance on Peterson, and I was fortunate to get him too, you want to nab Toby Gerhart as insurance just in case. I got Gerhart in round 9, round 10, I believe. So, you want to nab him. You want to make sure you get him if you take that chance, Peterson, just in case there's a setback or he's not quite there yet, or if he gets back on the list. If something were to happen, you want to have Gerhardt there because Gerhardt's still a solid runner. Um, Now, he showed at times last year when Peterson was down that he filled in admirably for him, put up decent fantasy numbers as a number 2 guy. But all signs are pointing that Peterson should be good to go for week 1. You can plug him in your lineup as a low number 1, I think high number 2 with upside from all the hearing that we're sounding. But again, grab Gerhardt just in case. The last guy I like that I also drafted, and some of these I know I sound biased because I drafted these guys, but that's why I drafted him because I really, really like this guy. He's another rookie, but I think this guy certainly has a lot of upside. You'll want to remember this name because this guy I think is again one of the breakout guys of the rookie class. Remember this name, Doug Martin. Okay, Doug Martin from Tampa Bay. SI has him as tier 3. I have him as a number 2 guy with really, really high upside. I like this guy. I think he should make a major impact right away. Look, LeGarrette Blount has been, don't get me wrong, he's a strong runner. He's a hard-nosed runner. The problem is in fantasy, he's just been so inconsistent. You know what I call these inconsistent guys? I call them hair pullers. That's what I call them because they week in week out you rely on consistent strong numbers from them, and then what do? They put up either zeros or they put up just not the numbers you were expecting, not the numbers that all the experts were expecting. These guys that just let you down week after week after week. That was Blount at times in the last couple of years. So I said, you know what? I'm not going to trust in LeGarrette Blount anymore. I'm going to avoid him. I'm not going to do it. So I think I like this guy, Doug Martin, because, someone else has to step up and be a consistent runner. Well, this guy played at Boise State, a win-friendly school. They won multitude of games the past few years. He's an every down back a la Trent Richardson. He's just a pounder, this guy that's going to break tackles and make plays. He's a playmaker. I think he's going to take over Blount for the starting job. And even though Blount recently said, oh, I see this as more of a tandem kind of deal. I see this as two of us working together. We're going to be the best 1-2 combo in the NFL. Well, I personally don't see that because I think Blount's lost his luster. I think he's kind of going on the downslope of his career, and I just don't see that happening. I think Martin's going to be the guy. I think he's the safer play. So don't hesitate to draft this guy as a number 2, maybe low number 2, high number 3, but with a lot of upside. I really like this guy. I hope he's going to prove to be a big stud for me this year. Don't be afraid to take him if he drops to you. You won't. I don't think you'll regret Doug Martin. Other deep sleepers that I like, Isaac Redmond of Pittsburgh. There's a lot to like with him. Who knows? Mendenhall is also coming off that injury from last year. So all signs are pointing to Redmond getting some playing time right away. He might be a good sneak number 2 play if things pan out for him early on. Pierre Thomas of New Orleans, I think he's kind of the safer number 2 guy behind Darren Sproles. I drafted Sproles to be one of my high-tier running backs with Peterson. But if you draft Sproles and maybe he's available there to you as a backup guy to fall back on, maybe you take Pierre Thomas. I don't like Mark Ingram, by the way. He's just been so injury prone over the years. I think his touch is really being cut into. I don't like him. I think Thomas is kind of maybe a number 3 guy with some upside, though. He's a good fallback guy to have on it, maybe if you have Sproles. And Michael Bush of Chicago. I think this guy is going to have a big impact too. He had a big impact in Oakland when Darren McFadden was missing all that time with injuries. He was being fantasy starting worthy there. So I think he's certainly starting out as a number 2 guy with upside. Obviously, Matt Forte is still the guy in Chicago. He just signed his new contract, got his new deal after all the holdout talk. So I think Bush will cut into his touches, but I think he's certainly a number 2, maybe low and number 3 with upside, depending on how things work out there. If they're going to work in tandem, who knows? Or if Forte goes down, that's happened before. So just keep your eye on Michael Bush. He could be one to look out for. Guys that I don't like that are kind of falling on the downslope. Again, Falcon people are going to hate me, but I'm sorry. Michael Turner's on the downswing, folks. I'm sorry. I don't like what the Falcons are putting out in terms of fantasy numbers. I just don't like it. Plus, he's 30 now. He's getting up there in age. Am I saying he's not a solid guy? No, but sooner or later it's going to happen that Jacquizz Rodgers, the young guy, is going to overtake Michael Turner, and they're going to give him more of a load and cut Turner's production back. It's just going to happen sooner or later. It might be this season. you know, 30 is ancient for anyone in the league, especially for a running back with all the wear and tear they go through. So it's just kind of a kind of a little bit of an alarm. Just FYI here, his numbers started to tail off at the bit at the end of last year, and Jacquez is waiting in the wings to take some of that workload away. Obviously, if Turner is there and if he's available to you, sure, you're definitely drafting him as potential as a great guy on your fantasy team. Don't get me wrong, but just kind of temper your expectations a little bit because you don't know. Are they going to give, is it going to be now instead of maybe 80-20 for Turner, is it going to be 60-40? Is it going to be a dead 50-50 split? We just don't know what the Falcons are going to do, but only because the fact that Atlanta does like to run the ball a lot and give, maybe Matt Ryan some backpedal a bit. That's why there's still upside with Turner. So I have him maybe a low number one, not an elite number one anymore, but a low number one, high number two with some upside, maybe just a twinge. Just kind of stay tuned and see how things are working out, maybe in camp or in preseason between him and Jacquez Rogers, just to see how that goes. It's certainly a safe play, but not elite as he once was. And then another guy that I think is really going to fall completely off the radar is Frank Gore in San Francisco. The guy has been hit with injury troubles through the years. It's not helping now that the Niners have loaded up the backfield. They got LaMichael James out of Oregon in the draft. They added Brandon Jacobs in the offseason. Plus, there's Kendall Hunter looming there behind him. This is now basically a four-man backfield, and all these guys are talented. But the question is, where's Gore going to get lost in that shuffle? Is he not going to be that number one guy anymore? He's never been the same player since all these troubles with his injuries, and now there's all this talent. The question is he going to be that fantasy stud he once was? I don't believe so. But, he's probably still going to be the number one guy, don't get me wrong, but he's going to share the rock more often because of all this young talent. Because of this, I'd say Gore is nothing more than a number two, number three guy. Kind of see, again, kind of a situation to watch, see how that things shake out there in San Francisco, that running back situation. Watch their preseason games, kind of see how they're using these running backs. Obviously preseason sometimes doesn't say a lot, but other times it can. So keep a watch on that. Just see how things shake out there with the running back situation there in San Francisco. Other guys to avoid that I just don't think are going to pan out, and I've probably been saying this for years, Panthers running back situation is a mess. I don't like Jonathan Stewart or D'Angelo Williams. Obviously, if you're going to go with one, I think now Stewart's the safer play just because he's younger. And D'Angelo's, I think, on the downslope of his career. Now it's even more cloudy. They brought in Tolbert, the guy from San Diego, so it's even more of a muddled mess. Just stay away from that altogether. I hate to say it because it's my team, but Javid Best of Detroit, the guy is a concussion nightmare waiting to happen. He had him in college. He had him last year in the NFL. The running back situation in Detroit is just mostly a mess. You have Best with his concussions. Mikel LaShore is getting dealings with pot. The Lions this offseason has just been so messy. It's almost a shame to wear this thing, but got to stand by my team. I just don't stand by those players that do crazy stuff off the field. But if you're wanting to take a running back, Detroit, the safe play, maybe Kevin Smith's going to be that guy for you. So just keep an eye on that. And again, I mentioned Mark Ingram in New Orleans. I don't like the fact that he's injury prone. The safer place for the Saints running backs are Sproles and Pierre Thomas. All right, guys, that's how I see some of the running backs playing out. Go ahead, don't forget, check out my channel for my other videos on quarterbacks, wide receivers, and tight ends. They're all going to be there for you to view and check out. If you have any questions on or comments on running backs that I didn't mention, or maybe some guys that have been hair pullers for you, who have been your hair pullers you've dealt with over the years, hit me up in the comments below for any questions. I'll try to answer as many as I can. But continue to watch this channel for those videos, and good luck this season. Take care.